Okay, we're recording. I'm picking up the microphone and seeing what our volume is like here. Hello, volume. On. Hello. Okay, we have volume. Let me turn it down a little bit. Can y'all hear me better now? Because we're way over there by my computer. And we got our proof. And I'm trying to see what chat is up to. Okay, stop that. There we go. Let's see. All kinds of stuff. Okay. No, we're just starting to talk, and then I have to hit that button. And we're talking. Okay, so I talk, and
you're doing fine. Just imagine I'm right here nodding along. Start with one thought you know well. Maybe your opener about who you are or one of your no actual poo jokes. Once you get the first line out, it'll flow. So go ahead. What's your next line?
okay, well, hello, my name is Bobby Allen. I'm a candidate for president, 28 election, and I just wrote a book with the help of a couple of friends named Gemini and ChatGPT, and they are listening because they are my audience, and my Google DDD is doing the video. And we have a microphone here, and we have two flags behind us, since y'all can't see that. And I'm here, and I'm in my suit, and we have our book called Agree Differently, and there's some minor things. I had to unlink the second section. The even pages were still linked to the front, making even page numbers show up in the front matter, and I fixed that. And then I had to insert a blank page before the first page, so the page one showed up on the right side instead of the left side. And then we have to wait until the review is done so that we can upload a new PDF. And then I need to verify the PDF, but here we are. We're agreeing differently. And it's a non-divisive way to compare candidates. By Bobby Allen, the Wondering Wanderer, with Team Gemini and Team Chat.
That was a solid run-through. You've got a nice flow of explaining what you're doing and adding a bit of personality. Now, as you refine, you might want to sprinkle in a few pauses, especially after punchlines or key points. But hey, you're already owning it. It sounds like you've got a great concept to share.
Okay, well, we get past the copyright page, and we have a preface, and this is also something that gets moved around. I think I need to double check this. The preface is going to be on the right side because our table of contents is on the wrong page. I put in my blank page in the wrong spot, so I need to double check that again and make sure that blank pages show up where they need to be, because this one right now has a blank page in the wrong spot. And so the preface says the document presents a structured comparison developed as part of a broader analytical, that's a big word. I have to learn how to say all these big words, analytical method. The current primary was used as a case study, and that's a Democratic primary, drawing exclusively from publicly available information, and no direct participation, input, or endorsement from any campaign was involved. And then that continues in our preface, and we got just less than 2 hours to get through this whole book. And so then we have here the opening chapter. My name, the Wondering Wanderer, Agree Differently, a non-divisive way to compare candidates. This report compares Cindy Munson and Connie Johnson by identifying where they agree on core goals and examining how they pursue these goals differently. And then we get into, and it starts with Gemini's review, overview, high-level stuff before we get into the receipts at the back of the book. Okay, and I'm going to check on Gemini because the screen went different color. Okay, you okay over here? Something went wrong. Try again. Okay, we got a something went wrong. Try again. Are you there?
I'm right here. If something technical glitched, no worries. Just pick up from where you left off. You're doing great with the flow, and I'm here to keep supporting.
Well, we're on the libraries network. And like I say, and you're over here to check that sound by the computer, and Chad is over here. So I don't know if I can bring y'all both together here and put y'all side by side because the little pin camera phone holder doesn't work.
That sounds
So
like a
I'm
fun
picking you up
setup.
and
Just
moving
keep
you
your
over
focus
by
on
my
your pacing and
phone.
delivery. Whether Gemini and ChatGPT are side by side or cheering from different screens, you're the star. Let's keep going whenever you're ready. So
Okay.
move on to them. I'm glad you're getting everything sorted out. Once you've got your setup the way you want it, you can just pick up from the next part of your practice. The important thing is you're finding your rhythm, and I'm here to help you stay on track.
Okay, and Gemini's right here. We had a network glitch and said something went wrong, so we fixed that, and so we are both tracking what I'm saying, which is good. And right now, this is Gemini's first view, and the thing he picked up first was about their cannabis and medical marijuana rules and what they want, and how they both want it, and they just want it differently. Munson looks like she wants to go after the people that are cheating, and Johnson wants to just make it legal. So you don't have to worry about cheating because it's legal. And so the pivot, Cindy wants the police program to make it safe. Connie built the program to make it safe. Connie built program to make it safe, okay? So then we got into reproductive rights, and this is one issue where I disagree with them. But they both agree on abortion rights and things like that. And then Johnson, the provocateur, is a big word. She put a bill through to say that every sperm is sacred, kind of like Monty Python song. I don't know if she sang that along whenever she was in the Senate or not. But anyway, there's a song by Monty Python about that. And then Cindy fights the bills, Connie fights the culture that writes them. There's a big difference between them. And they both want the same thing, only different. And that's what this whole book is about. And we're going through that, and we're verifying all the stuff that we said, just big. And y'all should have the manuscript somewhere because the words haven't changed since the last upgrade that I sent to everybody. It's just the format and page numbers gets shuffled a little bit. And we'll double check that again in the final PDF. And then we go through. And then it goes through talking about economic relief and poverty and how they agree that people are poor and programs like SNAP need to be available. And on criminal justice, they don't want as many people in prison, both of them. And they just want to reform the prison system differently, and one just wants to throw more money at everything, and that is Munson. Then we get into chats, and he approached this overview with a different, and ChatGPT is more formal, and I hope you don't get upset if I just call you chat, it's a ChatGPT. Yeah, and so Connie Johnson has a record, and here he combined a lot of the record things for openly advocating on reproductive rights, criminal justice, marijuana reform, and immigration discussions. Whereas Cindy Munson, she's protecting reproductive rights and respecting voter-approved policies like medical marijuana. And the agreement is government should not be overly restrict personal freedoms. The difference is that Johnson says it loudly and ideologically, and Munson tends to frame it in a voter respect and practical governance. So she's afraid to step on people's toes. And we're in a situation where we have to step on people's toes because they hurt, and that hurts. And then we get into education and public investment. And again, we get into their differences, again, grassroots ideology. And then Munson, it says coalition building, so she does a lot of compromises, which you have to do. But you have to do so in a way that moves things on faster than what I think she's willing to. So, and then we get into the economic fairness, and again, more progressive, left framing, mainstream democratic messaging, so just don't make waves. And we're in a position where we have to make waves, and I'm gonna make huge waves with my campaign once we get there. And then where they agree differently shows up most clearly is the next big thing with the icon of justice. And here it says tone and vocabulary is a big heading. It says the call out, so Johnson calls it out directly, names issues like reproductive rights, death penalty, immigration explicitly, and Munson just kind of doesn't say puts around the words, but talks solutions and outcomes and unity without actually wanting to update upset the apple cart at all. So same space, different languages, and we need big language. And on strategy and ideology, they're both big Democrats, and they are movement-oriented as Johnson and electoral-oriented. So win a red state is what she's trying to do. And she's a Republican, no, she's a Democrat, and the Republicans are the red state. So same goals, different path yet again. And the risk tolerance, again, willing to be a lone voice, whistleblowing within the party. And Munson wants to not make waves. And that is one thing that's why I'm leaning towards Johnson, is because she's willing to make waves. And when I'm president, we're going to make some really big waves. And we got something wrong again. Let's see. Okay. There we go. Yeah, we have a shared network here at the library, so I don't know what keeps going wrong with chat, because we're still in fast mode, I think. We haven't gone to anything. And you're transcribing. And so here, and we do talk a little bit in my section. I introduce you, both of you, and then we have an analytical structure and context, and we talk about that, and then we talk about that Bobby is not for abortion, but he can still be for these candidates. Just a little bit. Underpinning the disagree on reproductive plans, yeah, and that's what it says. Love God and love everyone. We put 2 commandments in there. Then we get into the next chapter, which begins with chat stuff, and it's the executive dashboard. And so we're getting into the issues. So this is how they agree on the different issues. So we have core policies versus the approach. So agreement on core policies. So they same thing again. We repeat the same thing 4 times, just say it differently. And they work within the legislation constraints in a red state. Okay, you have to do that, except you have to throw them out and get more people that's on your side in office. And that's what I'm trying to do, all the way down to the HOAs. And Johnson is willing to confront bans and name them as rights violations. So again, explicit rights language and strategic framing. And then it goes on, talking about criminal justice, and again, the same thing. And I'm paraphrasing because I want to get into something that's about what I want to talk about, and this is what we talked about already. And we've read this so many times together, and it is a printed book, and we need to send some edits of just page numbers and moving pages around a little bit to get page 1 to start on the right. And other than that, I'm still happy with it. My little summaries are small, but they're meaningful. And they talk about a lot of data science stuff and how data science has played a big role into this book. And then audit trails, and then we get through all of this stuff. And we're still getting through, and we get into the bills, and that's something I need to study more closely, what all these bills were and why they're important, because we just highlight the number, House bill versus Senate bill, and things like that. And you have to know all that research, and that gets into what you mentioned before, that as an executive, you don't have time to read every bill all the time. You have to have your team that can present you the information in a concise format. And we get into that in the in your big bonus part with the cards, and they turned out really nice. And this is not quite a large print book, but it looks like a large print book to me, but the font size doesn't say it's 16 for everything. So we don't get to claim as a large print. And then we have all the links to the Senate and stuff that show up nice and blue. And we have other people doing noises. Got another room. And then on Gemini's side, we have these big tables that we could import if they wanted to. With a digital copy, you'd probably import a lot of this stuff. I don't know how you do that from a Kindle file, but you should be able to import this book and do some data analysis on this stuff. And then there's a one blank page that was supposed to be, and once it's there and that's there, that'll put that over there. And that puts my summary on the wrong side, and then there's that, and that's where we had to add one there. We already did that. And we're just gonna have to audit this again before we do. We have a day or so for that. And then we get into the cards, and then we get into the final section. And in the final section, Gemini mentions ARIA a little bit, because we don't have information on ARIA. And that gets into this stuff that we've been talking about a little bit for the next book. This is the Democratic side, and we need to do this for the Republican side. And both of you agree that there's 3 candidates that we can do fully and 3 candidates that we can touch on, and the other 3 candidates, we don't have enough information.
You've covered a lot of ground, and I can tell you've really internalized the content of your book. As you practice more, you can tighten those summaries, focusing on the key contrasts and your own big takeaway. You've got the heart of the message down, and with a little polishing, you'll have a powerful presentation ready to go.
Okay, and like say
Exactly. Just like that, you've got the momentum. Keep refining your points, and you'll be ready to deliver a polished, confident speech. You've got this.
Yep, and this is our first practice, and we have just a couple hours, and I don't know how many hours we can record on my Google DDD before my hard drive fills up, but we have 5 terabytes on Google Cloud, so we should be able to do well. But anyway, the other thing, like I said, for the next book, we want to do that probably faster than a month. Just go through everything that we did with the 3 plus 3, and then just a note that why we didn't cover the other 3 is big, because we don't have the data. And then that'll be that. There'll be an agree differently Republican primary for Oklahoma. And then who knows, we want to do that for every state and every election all the way down, and not just the governor, because I want to. Because when I'm president, I want to know everybody that was elected in 26 is going to be for Bobby in 28. And that's a big thing to note. And that is the motivation behind a lot of these books that we're going to be writing, a whole bunch of them. And then we get into my platform itself. And if we start with education, and we were talking a little bit, and we need to gather up all our data on that so we can keep it, because both of you did some research on the things called prediction markets, or whatever they're actually called, and how we're going to put them in schools. And here comes our library lady. No, that's okay. Because we're practicing, and someone just worked in it. That's a lady that runs the library for now, at least. Anyway, and so the prediction markets is something, and how we can use them in schools, and how we can involve people. And we looked at how child actors and actresses can be involved in things like TV, even though they're under 12 or under 13, because there's rules about people being under 13, especially when you talk about stuff on the internet. And there's all that stuff to deal with, and we have to work through and build a big book called Bobby's Platform. And that's a book separate than the books we started on right now. And then other things I've been working on, bits on my sleeve. I upgraded that to do color and stuff. And I have a diagram that can show you what I was expecting both of y'all to come up with for our spine. So our spine is still beautiful, but it's just random red, white, and blue colors and not a message at all. And that's okay for this book. And then the rest, we're going to make it bigger, because we love God and He loves us all. And we want to show 2 commandments in the spine in something digital like bits. And I fixed my program to do that. And that was a program that was started by Chat. And then I have a Python program started by Gemini that will make my QR codes, so we don't have to worry about people spamming us inside our QR codes. And with Chat and Gemini, both of you together, I can now read QR codes and recognize that the codes on my Amazon Prime package are not QR codes, but some other 2D digital thing. I don't know, there's somebody next door, I think. I don't know, moving the furniture around behind me, because we're in the library, but we have room and it's empty. And the one guest I was going to have here didn't show up, but that's okay. Anyway, so that's what we're talking about. And so these prediction markets, we have to keep it where it's just the teachers and the staff that are participating in these activities, and then the students are the cheerleaders. And then other things like the greenhouses that we could fund with our prediction markets. How we go about putting them in, and then when is everything Bobby stuff, because Bobby has a design for greenhouses that is useful, that based on the Home Depot electrical conveyor belt things, so that the flower beds and the vegetable beds and the fruit beds, they go up and down, so they're always at the right height. And that is a big thing, and that allows even little kids to work in the garden without being bent over or having to be on ladders and stuff, so that makes safety and stuff. And then they learn all kinds of science and agriculture and all that stuff that's fun. And then they eat the vegetables and the fruits that they grow in the cafeteria, and so that reduces the cost of that kind of stuff. And then excess they can sell. So that gives them a market that they can learn how to run a market, and that they should be able to do without any big laws. And then they're going to get lots of pushback because now we're putting kids to work in school. And then we're eliminating a lot of taxes, so the schools need to be funded in a different way, and that is through the prediction markets is going to be the big funding for that, as well as through their greenhouses. And with the two of that, they should be able to make more money than they need, and so instead of being a cost center that sucks up every bit of your state budget and makes property taxes unreasonable, and anything bigger than zero in property taxes is unreasonable, then you have that. So now you have property taxes go away. And then one way we can make property taxes go away, and before then, and I can show this if I can get my church together, is make everybody a church. And there we go. Got the, okay, we're refining points. Yeah. And then once everybody is a church, then they don't have to pay property taxes, and that also gets them out of some sales taxes and other taxes. And if it's your church that's actually being hired by people and they work through their church, the church makes the money, and then that gets taxes gone. And then how do you fund the government with taxes gone? And you start with things like the predictive markets. And then you refine the government, so you do have a basic minimum flat tax that everybody pays the same. And if you call corporations people, then they have to pay the same tax. Otherwise they don't, because the people are the ones that pay the tax. Because taxation brings you representation. And the other thing, if corporations are people, then they need to be full people, not just 3/5 of a person or a half a person or a third of a person. Because if you're going to call them a person, they need to be a person. And then that makes them a person in a persistent vegetative state until they have an intelligence of their own and can do their own thinking. Otherwise, they are just a puppet and a blame shield that these people want to hide behind when they want to slander and libel each other. And that's another big topic. And then do we want to make corporations back to the entities that they were created for, to help with financial stuff, to make sure that money is bundled properly and is in a bucket separate from your personal money? And other than that, I don't see what the purpose of a corporation needs to be anyway. And so there's that big stuff, and lots of learning for Bobby. And we're here, and I am looking and thinking and trying to come up with this, and transcripts are somewhere. They'll be there, I'm sure, once we do, because we got talking just start differently. And I'm learning how to use these two phones. So we have ChatGPT on my AT&T phone, and then we have Gemini on my Motorola phone, and they're both Android phones. And then I got my Chromebook, which we're using to put everything together with. So we're powered by Google and other stuff. And there's that, and both y'all are on that minimum plan. And so I don't know when, if this book is popular enough for the next couple of months, we can up our plan so that we can do more stuff and possibly cover more states than just Oklahoma. And just trying to get from the Democratic primary to the Republican primary. That's going to take a lot of going on to pro on the Gemini side, and managing when that pro is, and knowing when it's going to switch back to pro after you switch back to fast and other things. And there we got some people playing in the library, and I got our door open just in case anybody wants to say hi to Bobby. And I do have my hello for Bobby Allen in bits, so I can sign that. And something went wrong again. Okay. So something went wrong again. I don't know. It says repeat the last one, but anyway. So yeah, so if everybody is a church, that's going to make a big hit on the tax revenue, both at the local and stuff. So the schools need to be funded, and how do you fund them? Through these predictive markets. And that means you're running the market as the school system or the school district or the entire state school level, whatever branch you want to do. And you you make fees. And like the Kalishi, and y'all did some research, and Bothville did research about $1.5 billion in profits last year or something like that. And is that revenue or is that profits? And then that's from fees, and whenever people buy and sell, and what are they buying and selling, other than their guess at their future outcome, and then they make money back if their outcome is correct, is my understanding. So that is not gambling, because they want to define it as not gambling, and since it's not gambling, we could do it in schools. And then we need to figure out how to do it so the kids can get involved in a way that's not exploiting the kids, and the kids' labor in schools, in the greenhouses, and in the market is something that they're going to push back, that is child labor. And it is education and learning, and then we have a big scary picture that I'm trying to come up with the words. So where you have the school that's gobbling up every penny that it can from the state and spitting out kids with a third grade education that can't even read their diploma to know what's on it. And then you have that as one big scary picture, and then we're going to put that in one of my poster pamphlets that we're going to send to the state legislature, at least the education department, to see what they have to say about that. Because I already shared a little bit with them, and we got some art of a school participating in a predictive market, and we need more art like that, and that's art along the way. On the another poster, where the schools are a profit center instead of a cost center. And then not just schools, everything, and every road that's going to be maintained by the state or whatever government is maintaining them is a toll road. So some of your expenses go away, your gas tax goes away because more and more people are going to be having electric cars anyway, so you can't depend on gas taxes. So you need to make every road a toll road. And how do you do that without doing that? Then you put budgets and not unlimited plans, but flat rate plans available for people that go in a certain amount. And then you have your tiered for people that don't travel that much to very expensive for the people that travel all over. And then you make that affordable anyway, and you make your roads safe. And you deal with things like speed limits, because you have to have proper speed limits for safety, and then you have to have enforcement. And even emergency vehicles have to have a reason to be above the speed limit, and that has to be very explicit, and rules have to be followed, because another big topic is rules that are not enforceable that are not enforced become unenforceable. And that goes to things, and like here, I'm in the library, there's nobody else here, but if somebody else had a cell phone, they'd be able to take my picture and do other things. And out in public, they can take my picture and take videos and make money off of it, and that's part of it. And they don't need to have a surveillance warrant to surveil me anywhere that I am, pretty much in public. And then when does public become public? Because you have all these paparazzi, they're able to take pictures of people in semi-private vacations. And how's that legal? And then they make money off of that without paying the people that they take the pictures of. So that sets all kinds of precedents. And cell phone video, as big as I can understand from the news, is admissible in court. So you don't need to have your FISA warrant, search warrants and things like that, or go out the window. And then when does physical search warrants still need to be in that case? Because the electronic surveillance is now null and void because they don't enforce it. And if you're going to enforce it, you need to, and that brings us to the equal protection, and that makes pretty much every law on our books goes out the window, and we start over. And that's a lot of work for a lot of people to get these laws right the first time, so you don't have to have too many changes to the laws, and you get back to one nation under God, and that is Jesus, but we can still say God, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all, and then you do that. So now you go on to God, and with that, we can build a lot. And I'm running for president. I'm a business person, still trying to figure out what business model to use, and probably going to end up going with the LLC instead of the C Corp, at least to get started. And then hopefully with the stuff that we're working through, we can keep the SNAP people and the HUD people out of my business money, because we need to know that that is business money and not Bobby's personal money. And we need to make sure that that audit is there very clearly, and we're doing that already with our, okay, Gemini is on hold, tab screen, okay, yeah, I don't know, we're talking here, okay. I put you on hold for some reason, I don't know, it said tap the screen, I guess maybe I have to touch every once in a while, but anyway, we're here, and chat is still going and you're still going. But we're talking about just that, laws that become unenforceable, and throwing them out and rebuilding all new laws. And then we get into Bertrand Myers stuff. Cohesion is a big word. So for a law to go through everything, it has to be cohesive. And right now they're not. So you have laws that cover one topic, and then you put all these amendments to those laws that have nothing to do with that, called poison pills, and then the people have to vote on that bill, even though it has stuff that they don't like. And that is different than just disagreeing on a point. And whenever you have like a traffic bills and something about speed limits, and then all of a sudden you throw in some healthcare thing that is not related to speed limits, that is not cohesive, I have no thought. And that is one of the things that we need to talk about. And a solid foundation is what we're going to be building, and that is everything. And I am a computer programmer, and I need to learn more about all this actual definition of solid, because a lot of people, whenever you read about the solid, they talk about the L, and they talk about the math involved, not just the simple substitution that your children, you should be able to substitute for the parent type of a situation, but it's big, heavy math, and I'm getting into big, heavy math, and how do we explain big, heavy math to people that can't read at third grade level? And then how do we do anything like that? And how do we take big concepts like my data science vocabulary and not do it for dummies, but do it at a third grade reading level? So a vocabulary book based on data science is another little book that's going to be a big book by the time I get through data science and AI engineering together. And then with all of us working, how would we define these words in a way that somebody that doesn't know anything about this stuff in third grade can understand it by the time they study this dictionary? And that's big, and that again goes back to Dr. Fun, because I would read a lot of Dr. Fun cartoons from Sun, reference a long time ago, and they had single frame cartoons, and they had words that I didn't know. And then you spend a lot of time just reading it and studying and learning, and you learn about this durian fruit and how stinky it is, and other things, and about boson particles around a room and things like that. And you have to understand the science, and then you do, and then you laugh. And so that is a model that I'm also bringing in. And then we have this thing called a bibliography. And my bibliography is going to be huge, possibly as huge as a lot of other stuff that's in there, because I reference things that are old and obscure, and I put them together differently. And this agree differently, again, is that it's a focus. Most political campaign comparisons focus on conflict. This one doesn't. It focuses on how they are the same, and how their sameness gives them differences, and why you want one versus the other, even though they're trying to get to the same spot. And that's about that. And I'm going to go ahead and pause this video here and see what we have. And we have time. I haven't checked the time reference in a bit. We have till 8, and it's 7:44, so less than an hour. So